Hi, everyone. Sorry for the delay there, and welcome to this webinar. Today, we will be speaking about the digital product passports and their opportunity for transformative growth. Before we dive into the content, let me walk you through a few important details to get the most out of this webinar. First, your video and microphone will be muted throughout the session, but we encourage interaction. On the, right side of the chat, right side of the screen, there's a couple of options. The first one is the chat, where you can chat and interact and share ideas with other participants. Then there's a Q&A section where we allow you to ask questions. Mind you that you can also upvote questions that you find important, and there's a bigger chance that we will deal with them on stage. Thirdly, there's also going to be polls. Now, we've got a lot of participants, and not everyone is a brand, and the polls are really intended for the brands. And we will share the results on stage. So yeah, I think it's interesting for everyone to see where brands are at in their digital product passport journey. So without further ado, let's get started. Before we continue, let me first introduce the speakers. I will keep it very brief because the speakers will introduce themselves as well. We've got Neil Greenhack from the Charming. He's the Digital Solutions Director. Then we have Jeanette van der Stoel, the fashion lead at GS1. And then there's me. I'm Bas, I'm the founder at Tappr. And together we'll explore how DPPs are going to deliver transformative growth. So before we get started, because we've got a very busy schedule, the agenda of today. So we'll start with what is DPP and how is the world transforming, where we will cover how the basics of a digital product passport are going to be and why there's such a hot big deal right now. Afterwards, Neil will dive into the regulatory pressure that's coming and the new regulations that's coming up. And he will also speak about how smart data management can help you comply time and time again with all the regulations that are coming. After that, Jeanette will break down GS1 Digital Link, a foundational part of the digital product passport. And then I'll come back on stage, discuss the circular economy, and also how you can use a digital product passport for commercial opportunities. And at the very end, we will have 3 tips where you can have, where we teach you based on our customers, how you can use DPP and how you can successfully roll it out. I forgot one part. All the questions will be answered. So even if your question is not being dealt with at stage, we have people that are monitoring the chat and answering questions right away, but also everyone will receive an answer because we will email you and follow up on your questions. So please raise your questions. Let's get started. This is King Henry V, who is the first person ever to receive a passport. This personal identification document dates back to 1414, making the beginning of the passport system, of the personal identification. Today, it's unthinkable for people or persons to not have a personal identity. But consider this. Every year, billions and billions and billions of products are introduced into the world, but unlike people, they have no form of identification. It may have something like a care label explaining where it was manufactured, but we don't know where the components are coming from, or even what should happen with this product at the end of the life cycle. And that's going to change. 10 years from now, every consumer product will have a digital ID. Kids that are born in 2035 become young adults in 2050 will not believe that there was a time without this identification of products, that brands were just able to put all these products into the world and not track their life cycle or support the life cycle of the product. And that's going to change. And you, all of us here together are part of this transition. We are going to give every product, every consumer good, every garment a voice. Every product will be able to speak. It will tell the consumer where it came from, the components, how you can care for it, what you can do if you're done with it, or how you can repair it, resell it, all these kind of opportunities. Textiles are going to be first, as the EU has prioritized them, but it's going to happen to every product. But today we'll be speaking about fashion. Today we're speaking about how every garment is going to get a digital ID from a digital product passport. And why now? Well, it's not just the regulation. I know that 80% of the audience is here today because of the regulation, and Neil is going to enlighten us with everything we know so far. But regulation is just one of those transformative changes or innovations that bring the digital product passport forward. Let's start with the circular economy. The circular economy, it's really advancing today. DIY repair videos on TikTok are trending. And let's speak about Vinted. They've had their first profitable quarter ever since, you know. They've reached profitability as a circular business model, which is a great milestone. I'll spare you the statistics, but Gen Z, boomers, my grandparents, everyone's buying on Vinted today and proving that the circular economy is real. Barcodes are also on their way out. And I don't want to steal the thunder from Jeanette because she's going to break down GS1 digital ink for us. But the time of barcodes in garments, hang tech, supermarkets, you know, enjoy it while it lasts, because it's not going to last for much longer. Then there's the QR and NFC adoption. Everyone can scan QR codes because of COVID. And this is also such an important part of this digital product passport. In 2017, iPhones introduced the scanning of QR codes natively in the camera app. Before that, they were just not there. And how could you have a digital product passport without a QR code or an NFC tag? It's impossible. This is also a crucial part of why digital product passports are going to boom right now. Following up progressive web apps. This might be new to many of you that are not in this technical space, but this new technology where apps are living online is also this foundational part that allows a digital product passport to be interactive, to be online, accessible right from your smartphone just by scanning your product. And then, of course, the regulation. And before we invite Neil to the stage, we've prepared a little poll for you to see how excited you are about the digital product passport. So let's move on to the poll. So the first poll of today is, are you excited about the digital product passport? I'll give 10, 15 seconds for people to vote. Are you excited? We are excited, I can tell you. I'll give 10 more seconds. And let's see the results. Yes, we're very excited. Well, that's good to hear. We are excited as well. Somewhat excited, but we have concerns about regulations, and no, we're not excited. Well, somewhat excited, but we have concerns about the regulations. Maybe we can help you out there by sharing some insightful resources. Neil, can I invite you on stage?
Bas, of course, delighted to be here. I think it's clear that the EU is targeting a greener future, and the EU industrial strategy tells us that. The headline is that Europe is embarking on a transition towards climate neutrality and digital leadership. The European industrial strategy aims to ensure that European industry can lead the way as we enter this new age. Today, I'm going to focus on the impact on the textile sector. Obviously, that's what we're all here to talk about. But it's also to be noted that the directives will ultimately apply to all sectors. And specifically, the battery sector will be the first to be mandated DPP in 2027. The main influencing factors of the strategy that are driving us towards DPP are ESPR, Directive on Green Claims, as a headline, EU acts. But also we see member state acts such as French AGEC and also United Nations initiatives focusing on supply chain and product transparency. And they're Neil, really locking down what we must say about our textile products in the future.
Neil, I'm going to leave the stage now. We'll leave you with your presentation. Good luck.
Okay, thank you. ESPR and DPP are improving the environmental sustainability and circularity of products, enhancing traceability, circularity and transparency throughout the entire life cycle of fashion products, offering detailed information about the product throughout its entire life cycle. And the objective really is to deliver that transparency across the community. The requirements, although yet not fully mandated, are likely to be detailed product information through DPP, adopting transparency standards, promoting reuse, and engaging the consumers in circularity. What we have to remember is the overall initiative is about societal change, not just about presenting data and killing greenwashing. And using transparency data to drive continuous improvement in environmental impacts, not just of the economic actors, the brands and the retailers and the manufacturers, but also as the sector and industry as a whole. Similarly, directive on green claims it is forcing us to make green claims reliable, comparable and verifiable. And of course, a good way of doing that is through digital product passports. The requirement being economic actors adhere to the LCAs and that they are presenting. They deliver transparent and verified data to back up those claims and assess impact from cradle to grave. We also see outside of the EU, stepping outside a little bit, movement in the US as well, with the recent introduction of SB 707 in California, where producers or economic actors, in our terms, are to implement and fund programs to facilitate reuse, repair and recycling of clothing and textile fibers. But back to the EU and DPP. So what is a DPP? Just to be clear, a digital product passport is a digital record that provides comprehensive information about a product and its entire value chain. So it really is the convergence of all of the information we've just been discussing within the legislation and presenting that, collating it, presenting it, and pushing it to interested parties. It's a key component of ESPR. So in effect of that, we need to be communicating upstream data. So that's from point of sale and prior to point of sale. So the manufacturing and supply chain aspect of that product, and presenting its provenance and performance, but also, as I've already mentioned, engaging consumers in downstream circular activity, repair, resale, reuse, recycle, etc. And ultimately, the end game is to provide a full circular view of an individual product and the sector as a whole. So what are the timelines? Well, the timelines for this are not fully established and fully clear. There are currently no truly definitive timelines, but we know from STOA and Surpass that the expectations are that there will be a standardization request by 2025, which will set the framework for the legislation. And it is intended that DPPs will become mandatory in textile mid-2027. Surpass 2 and other actors will be supporting the definition of the standardization request. And it suggested that there will be a 3-phase implementation of DPP. So simplified version in 2027, advanced version in 2030, and a full circular DPP by 2033. That means in the textile sector, we face a bit of a challenge. We don't fully know what the DPP content will be, what the protocols will be, and we've got a dispersed network of data. And it's the big data challenge, how to collect and organize the data in a dispersed landscape. We'll hear a lot about data ontology as we move into the DPP world. Ontology is the model for organizing structured and unstructured information and defining the properties and relationships between them. But let's quickly have a brief look at that landscape as we see it now. We have a map there. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but that's basically a mind map of the upstream ontology of a finished textile product. We see the influencing factors and economic actors in there, from assembly, from transport, from packaging, and from the brand itself. It is thought that the highlighted attributes there will be the initial simplified DPP. But then if we start to think about what's going to happen in a full circular or heading towards a full circular world, we will have the added demand for a digital product passport, presenting that both to a consumer in a consumer-facing solution and the central registry itself. Downstream, you have also other events that will form part of that landscape of a data set associated with that garment. So we have recycling, we have resale, we have reuse, even the point of sale, time and purchase, etc. They create the full picture of the life cycle of that particular textile. Translating that into a world that we understand with systems and platforms, the data flow currently sits something like this. So most brands have an ERP, a product lifecycle management solution of some description, somewhere they store all the garment imagery, somewhere they store their marketing assets. And of course, we're generating information, digital information right now that we use to produce the trims and labels. So in the current landscape, we can connect all that data from a product perspective, from a purchase order perspective, batch perspective, and in the areas where we are trying to find further information further down the supply tiers, so tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, etc., we see the growing emergence of supply chain data tools. Now, what we're using in the world in which we operate are key resolvers or key identifiers to join that data together in databases and through interactions with those different systems. And there are multiple different versions of this data flow. Here's another one where we're using data solutions or data lakes, or in fact, the supply chain transparency solution becomes that data lake, connecting all that data together. In the future, we may see a progression to what's called semantic web technology, which would avoid the requirement for peer-to-peer solution connections. But that's another story for another day. And there are better experts in semantic web than me to talk about that. But effectively, that means you don't need to connect your systems together. We don't operate on databases. It's a web function that farms data from multiple solutions around the world. Technical issue, but ultimately what we see is the basic structure of a simple DPP following a scheme that we see on screen here. So we have the basic product page, and then we have the attributes associated with product design, production and supply chain, product use, recycling, reuse, and seal, and resale. And that's relatively simple to deliver once the data is available. What will the content be when we get to a simplified DPP in 2027? Well, the EU JRC are currently defining that data or suggesting what that data should be. That, as far as I understand, will then be passed to Surpass, and Surpass will then refine that, and that will then become part of the standardization request going forward. So with all that in mind, the landscape is moving in a direction that we are confident it will move in. The details as yet and the protocols are not fully clear right now, but we see that process where they will be. And our recommendations right now is, what should we be doing as an industry? Well, we should be collecting the right data, storing that data appropriately, finding ways to communicate that data effectively, and understanding the product's journey. So diving deeper into our supply chain. So really, that is our closing advice of where we are now. Start to understand more about our supply chains, collect that data, get it in place, but start now, because trying to eat the whole elephant at the beginning of 2027 would be an enormous task. So there we have it, compliance and data in a nutshell. But there's much more to DPP than data, and very soon Bas will talk more about the added benefits of using DPP to connect your consumers. But first, let's move to a poll and then take some questions. Thank you. So, poll. Does your company have all key stakeholders aligned on the future impacts of ESPR and DPP? As Bas did previously, I'll give you a few seconds to vote, and then hopefully we should see everything coming on screen. And the results should be coming. Give it another few seconds. Here we go. So it seems that 50 something, just over 50% are starting to get the process in place. Stakeholders are aligned. Sometimes it's difficult to understand which stakeholders to have in place. But yeah, it seems positive. It's certainly a higher response in the middle section than I saw in the meetings I had with brands and retailers over the 2023. So positive and good that 10% are fully aligned and actions are in place. Not yet aligned. I think we need to start now, and hopefully this can be the pivotal point where you do start to think about how this legislation will impact you and how DPPs can be deployed. Thank you. So let's move on to some questions. I'm going to invite Bas back to the stage. Hey, Bas.
Neil, sorry, I was muted. That's a common mistake. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Everybody does it, Bas.
Everyone does it. Well, I don't want to let 100 somewhat people waiting. First question. I think the one from Richard. The name is cut off from Richard. Richard first, it seems like. Which elements of current future legislation define that PO information is required in issuing DPPs? Now, Neil, I want to answer it, but you should go first. You should go first.
Okay. It is likely that the requirement for the granularity of DPP will be at lot level. Now, in our world, we expect that to be purchase order information. The main reason for that, it is conceivable that the same SKU could be manufactured in two separate factories with different carbon footprint, with different supply chain logistics involved. But obviously, until the standardization request is finalized and submitted, we won't know that information. But certainly the current belief is that PO level will be the level of granularity required.
Yeah, Neil, I think what you just said, right? I think our largest client we share today is the top products from this brand are being manufactured in different factories. And if you want to distinguish between one supply chain or the other, you just need the purchase order as part of the QR code, because you have to determine, like, okay, part of which supply chain flow was this based on. A very interesting question. Thanks a lot, Richard, for this question. We hope it's answered. Let's move on to the next one. This is from Kelly Winter. As we know, the DPP parameters are still not finalized. Do you have an update from the EU? When will we know for certain what will be required from us? Thanks, Kelly. Well, thanks, Kelly, for the question. And Neil, take it away.
Yeah, I think, well, the answer is quite clearly no, we don't know for certain right now. When we will know for certain will be sometime in 2025. And that's when the standardization request will be made. It's not clear to me when the JRC will release their initial findings, but I'm guessing that's probably going to be mid-2025 before it hits the expert working groups and surpass for rationalization. Yeah, we just have to wait and see, unfortunately.
Thanks, Neil. Let's move on to the final question before we continue with the webinar. This one's from Bridget Hart. When will we know what textile products will be included in the legislation?
Yeah, again, that will be part of the standardization request. What we know right now, it is intended that all clothing products, all types of garments, including casual wear, workwear, and outerwear, will be included. Footwear, shoes, boots, sandals, and other types of footwear will be included. Household textiles, so bedding, towels, curtains, etc., will be included. Accessories such as bags, belts, scarves, and similar textile-based products, where they draw the line at textile content on a mixed product material, we don't know at this time. And obviously, other areas such as technical textiles may or may not be included. Yeah, we just have to wait and see. But if we assume all textile products, I think we'll be safe.
All right, thank you so much, Neil. I think these were the questions for now. There were more questions in the chat. Please raise them in the Q&A. You can vote there as well. And there's more time at the end of the webinar to discuss these questions. So we're now going to continue, but we will get back to you. Thanks, Neil, for your presentation. And I think I'll see you later in this webinar.
See you later, Bas.
We're now going to move on to the next speaker. It's a she's from GS1, and she's going to be speaking about GS1 digital link. She should be with me on stage right now. Hey, Jeanette.
Hi, Bas.
We can all see you. Jeanette, I'm going to leave the stage. It's all yours. Take it away.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Jeanette van der Stoel. I am Sector Lead Textile and Apparel at GS1 Netherlands. And today I will guide you through what we can offer in terms of digital product passports for standardization. But first, I would like to introduce who GS1 Netherlands is. So you all know the barcode, which was introduced 50 years ago by GS1 with the G10. GS1 is a not-for-profit organization, a standardization organization. We have 40,000 participants in Netherlands alone, not only in textile and apparel, but also in other industries like healthcare, construction, food, retail, DIY, etc. But we are based in 116 countries. Today, I will guide you through what we can offer for digital product passport. But at first, so this is in terms of standardization. We first start with identification. So what I just showed was the GTIN, Global Trade Item Number, or Identification Number, also known as EAN. And you start identifying the product. And this can be with a QR code or an RFID tag. And what you want to identify is, in the end, the digital product passport. And what's in there is, for example, where a product data, where it came from, bill of material, packaging information, etc., which you can scan as a consumer, but also event data. And this is not mandatory. Well, it needs to be decided yet by the European Union. But event data can mean, for example, repair, lease, and recycling information. What's important is that data that we can share is interoperable. And this interoperability is for systems, but also for consumers and for companies. So how does this look like? You all know a QR code which links to a website. But GS1 offers a GS1 digital link. And this means you can link to multiple sources. So how does it look like? You have a product, in this case, a jeans with a GTIN, and it could be either serialized or a batch number or lot. Serialized is that the product is per item, it's a different number, and on batch, it's of course on the batch level. And then you want to scan this product, and a consumer can see information about the digital product passport. But for example, a recycler can also access information. And if you're in a store and you want to sell the product, it can go at point of sale. So you have one QR code with multiple sources and multiple links with product information, certificate information, point of sale information, and that makes it different from the QR code that you already know. So a little bit more in detail in technical information. So how does this look like? You have the link. At first, you have the domain. This is now shown from GS1, but this can also be from your own company. Then you have the product key, and it's always linked to the GTIN. In this case, we has shown this link for a batch level. So you have the batch number and then you have the number, but this can also be for a serialized number. And behind this link, you can add link types. So it can go to the certificates, to the digital product passport, and the QR code the number remains the same. So this means you have one QR code with different links. In short, how does it look like? To summarize it, you have a product and you identify the product. This can be with a GS1 digital link. It can be serialized or in batch level, but it doesn't need to be. It's encoded, in this case in a QR code, and it can be scanned with a mobile device, but also with a scanner. And then it calls to a resolver, and this resolver makes sure that you can add the different link types. And it resolves into a digital product passport, but as shown below, it can also link to certificates, event like repair information, instructions, etc. And an example of a GS1 digital link is with Tappr. Tappr is a solution provider who uses the standards of GS1. So as a company, you can work with Tappr, and they work with the GS1 standards if you use the GTIN. So together we work through circular economy, and I'm happy to answer questions you might have.
Hey, Jeanette, I'm back on stage. Thanks, Jeanette, for this presentation. Very interesting. Just seeing, am I not muted? I'm not. Yeah, so we got a couple of questions. The first one is from Christopher F. And the question from Christopher is, do we need to buy these GS1 digital links? I think it's a good question.
That's a very good question, and thanks for asking. So if you already buy the code package with the GTIN, you don't need to buy the GS1 digital link. You can either transform it in a barcode or in a QR code, and the GS1 digital link is free of charge.
Okay, so you just keep buying the GS1 codes like we've done in the last decades?
Yes, you already have
instead
done.
code.
Exactly.
Okay, very clear. Thanks, Jeanette. Just to be sure, I knew that already. Seems like I'm okay. Never mind. Okay, moving on. Richard, again, your name is cut off, which is very important. Richard first. In case of repair, is the repair party carrying out the repair responsible to attach an updated or new DPP on a product? For example, a shirt repaired and horn buttons added by a third party. So who's updating the DPP?
Yeah, that's a very good question. This has still been determined yet. But for example, if you're a company and you have a lot of repairs, you can also find some other repair stores, and you can give them the access to the information so that they can change the data. And that's still needs to be determined yet. There are some tryouts with larger companies who are already starting to work with this. But this needs to be determined still. But what I think what is going to happen is that we have some repair centers, and a brand gives the access that a repair center can add the information that a product has been repaired or refurbished.
Yeah, I think especially with a trusted service network, it's going to be vastly different than with an open network, right? So, if you have a brand that has like authorized service centers, they can add it because they have the authorization to add things to the digital product passport. But if you're going to this full open economy where every stakeholder can add data based on the repair, that is something that we have to decide on a more global level, where surely GS1 has an important impact. We're going to move on to the last question, and surely we can ask some more questions at the end. I think from I'm sorry if I mispronounce this, EYZ. Do you offer service in response to the mandatory request backup? It's a tough question, I think.
I am not quite sure what is meant with the mandatory request backup. So sorry, I cannot answer this question.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Okay, we will come back to you, EY, on this one. And thanks, Jeanette, for this very insightful presentation. Now we're going to continue with the next part of the presentation, which will be me. We'll be speaking about the circular economy and all the commercial benefits that a DPP offers. I hope my screen is now visible. So let's get started. We're stepping into the future of the circular economy, and it's not just a possibility, it's happening. And today I want to speak about the transition from before DPP to after DPP. So before DPP, brands could only earn once, right? You produce the product, you sell the product, you sell it to a wholesaler, you sell it to a consumer, it doesn't matter. And after that, you're blind. The life cycle of the product is unmonetized, it's untracked. You have no clue where, what happens to your product. And that creates a lot of lost opportunities, because with a DPP, that initial sale is just the first revenue opportunity that you have. So that's just the first money that comes in. And afterwards, the whole life cycle is monetized, and you create so many revenue opportunities. So the first revenue opportunity is of course the sale, but then maybe a consumer will resell the product through your resale platform like Archive Resale or Trove. There's a ton of them out there that are being successful right now. And you can actually earn a second time on the same product you've sold. And afterwards, the second owner might need a repair, and you can offer this repair as a service and generate service revenue. And at the end of the life cycle, you're actually able to see like, okay, how long has this product last? You can make these life cycle assessments. And the shift from this unmonetized life cycle to this monetized life cycle creates so much opportunity. I mean, if a CFO of a brand today, or maybe for the last 10 years, says like, we want to grow 20% in revenue, your only answer is, okay, we got to sell more, we got to find new distribution channels. But going forwards, the chance to grow through your existing products that you've already sold, so going to a product lifetime value, brands can actually earn money without producing more and more products. And that brands that get this part right will not only thrive in the next 10 years, but they'll thrive in the next 50 years, maybe even 100. Now, focusing on what exactly are these opportunities where DPP supports circularity? Well, you can think of a ton of them, right? And if you drink a bottle of wine, then you could think of even more. But these are the ones that we see as the most concrete opportunities today, how brands can embrace the circular economy. Resale services are a very promising area. We're seeing a lot of brands launching their own resale service, and we'll dive into that one after this slide. Repair and care services, they can build this customer loyalty, but they're also creating service revenues. I actually have a cool example of that one, which I will share later. Then you have the end of life options. What does a consumer do when they're done with the product? Well, they shouldn't bin it, right? So how can you move and help consumers getting it into the right recycle flows or whatever take-back scheme you can think of? There's also room to explore leasing and rental options, which is a way how brands can support to keep the products in circulation longer. And with DPPs tracking the entire life cycle, brands can perform those life cycle assessments. And I think this is very, very important for brands, because sometimes maybe the product environmental footprint is not that good, but if it lasts very long, then you can still have a sustainable product, because it's gonna, go from owner to owner, and it has a long lifetime. DPP is about unlocking circularity in every stage. And we're just now going to dive into two examples, right? So the first one is the one-click resale through QR. Basically, how it works is a consumer scans the product, right? They just take it out of their wardrobe, they scan the product, and without any friction, they can instantly just hit that resale button and resell the product, and make sure that someone else is getting is going to enjoy the product. And there's a lot of benefits there, because for resale platforms, they benefit from this as well. First and foremost, you're getting way much offering, but also the quality of the product listing is getting way better, because the digital product passport contains all the data. So, the listing, the product listing is going to be with good pictures. It's going to look nice, consumers can really see how it looks on a proper model, instead of having like something that's on the bed with a homemade picture, etc. And brands also can have this visibility into this product life cycle. They can engage with secondhand consumers and build a relation with them as well. And crucially, counterfeit is a real problem to a lot of brands. And also there, the digital product passport is going to have massive impact, because the DPP will provide the authenticity and ensure that consumers are buying the real thing. So resale is a big opportunity. I think it's one of the biggest opportunities we currently see in the circular economy. Now, moving on to repair and care. On the right, you can see Studio Andalus, and Studio Andalus is a customer, and they have a very advanced digital product passport. But I just want to specifically zoom into their care instructions, right? So we all know the Gynatex symbols, right? And this is my personal opinion. They always look like word games to me, right? I never understand what it means. It's like a triangle with a cross. And Studio Andalus is just able to give those really good care instructions just right on the spot, right? Like actually care instructions that everyone gets, right? This one is quite simple, but one of their care instructions are like, hey, don't use too much liquid detergent. Very sustainable, probably the most sustainable thing you can do. We should have done this like 10 years ago. Now, Nordisk, this is a tent brand, which is, a tent is also a textile product. And they have prepared and focused more on the consumer experience. So like, instead of giving like a manual that's printed, I mean, they still do that because it's mandatory, but you can also give this digital version of this manual, and people can scan it, and they don't have a manual that's just like in text and schematics, but it's actually a video. One of the things we're exploring there is, for instance, they can, in the future, they want to support their customers by offering a surface which is called the industrial washing surface. So your tent has like a coating that's like waterproof, and after time it fades, and then if you wash it again in a factory with the right material, you can actually extend its life cycle while making it completely waterproof again. And these kind of surfaces, repairs, offering the best care instructions, these are ways how brands can engage with consumers and provide them the best possible experience. Now, besides the circular economy, we are also going to talk briefly about how DPPs can unlock commercial opportunities. Because this is a quote we use. So prepare for the regulation of tomorrow by capitalizing on the innovation today, not written by ChatGPT. And this is basically the concept of how can DPPs go from a cost of compliance, because that's how brands see it right now. It's a cost of compliance. How can we go to a return on investment? And in order for us to understand how this is going to support a brand, we first want to explore how consumers are currently discovering products. So we might all of us might know that marketplaces are booming, and according to McKinsey, they will only keep growing. 35% of the customers are currently discovering products on marketplaces. And for me personally, it's easy to see why, right? I mean, I'm a massive marketplace consumer. I'm a little bit ashamed of it, but it's true. And they offer this extremely good service, right? Like same day delivery, very quick returns. It's very convenient for a consumer to work with a marketplace. But from a sustainability perspective, they present challenges. And although that's a separate discussion, for brands also, they are maybe not the best idea. They are potentially very dangerous to brands. And I will explain a little bit how, like, we have been speaking to boardrooms where 15% of the top line revenue is coming from a marketplace like Zalando. And the thing is, Zalando keeps getting more expensive. They keep increasing their commission rates. And we have seen a similar phenomenon in other industries. So imagine if you are a hotel in Frankfurt, can you live without Booking or Expedia? No, you can't. If you do not list your hotel on Booking or Expedia, you're gone. If you're a kebab shop in London, can you live without Uber Eats or takeaway? Well, maybe if you're at a high traffic spot, but if you're somewhere in a suburb, you cannot live without those platforms. And this revenue concentration, this revenue aggregation is kind of happening to this to the fashion industry as well, with all these big online retailers becoming a marketplace. And let me be very clear about this. Marketplaces are here to stay. We are not about eliminating marketplaces, but we are about empowering brands to navigate this. And that brings me to, like, how can you get a return on investment on your digital product passport? Well, first and foremost, with this DPP, with this QR code or NFC tag, you can recreate that magical moment between consumers and your brand. You can share your brand ethos, you can highlight your sustainability efforts, and you can forge a lasting bond between your consumer. You can transform them into raging fans. But it's more than only that. You can truly connect with your consumer. You can capture their data, their personal details, but it will be like an ethical relation, right? The time of trackers and secretly following your consumers, those days are in the past. We've got the GDPR, we've got all the technology providers blocking all these cookies and trackers. You might have heard of it from the news. And what we actually enable brands to do is to truthfully connect with your consumer, and that generates a direct ROI for the marketing teams of a brand. So we've got a lot of brands doing this, and we want to share the most successful customer case with you today. We can do a reference call for the customers that are really interested, for the prospects that are really interested in this. Again, this is the most successful client today. We just, this morning, we got the data out of their tenant with their approval, of course. And what you can see is this brand operates globally. And the consumer heat map here, which you can see right here, it shows you, like, where are my consumers? You can even see it on, like, a very, very specific scale, like, okay, where, if you zoom in, you can see, like, okay, where do they live? And they gave that data because they truthfully want to connect with the brand. And you can see that we've been doing this as of the beginning of 2023, and they keep connecting with the brand because they actually like it. Some of the KPIs are, for instance, the scan rate. So this is what we call, from the total number of QR codes that have been printed and gone into products, how many have been scanned at least once? And again, this is our most successful client today, 76%. So 3/4 of all the product manufactured are being, they experience the product in a digital way. And then from those 76%, 84% decides to actually connect with the brand, sign up, and share their details. In this customer, the reason why is access to secret sales, as well as a novel lost and found system. And all this data directly flows into the CRM, and the brand is really able to get a return on investment. Their DPP is free. Now it's a growing, it's a way how they can grow. It's a customer connection engine, basically. And DPP is a highly appreciated system by consumers. They're very happy with it. So this is just an example of how a DPP is not just a cost of compliance, but also return on investment. Now, maybe there's some questions about this topic. If I can invite Neil back on stage.
Hey, Bas, it's now time for me to put you under pressure. I do believe we have quite some interesting questions for you. So first question, based on your or our experiences, do you have advices and suggestions on onboarding stakeholders in the dispersed landscape to get aligned?
Yeah, I think this is a good question. So usually and I think if you're a garment manufacturer, if you're a brand, if you're a fashion brand, I would say usually the project now starts with your compliance or your sustainability team. And it's definitely wise to onboard your IT team, because they're extremely important. I would say they're the biggest enabler, because if you take away all the experiences and the branded opportunities, it becomes a data game, right? I think that's what we learned from your presentation, Neil. It's really a data game. Mm-hmm. And you have to get the data architecture, the data storing, the data integration, you have to get it right. So the sustainability team together with the IT team, I would say that's most necessary in order to get to compliance. And then if you see, like, hey, every product is getting this QR code with this digital product passport, well, maybe we should invite our branded team, our brand marketeers, or whoever's responsible for the design to make sure that it looks good, that it's in line with our branding, right? And then if you've nailed that, then maybe later on you can involve your marketing team and see like, hey, what else can we do with this digital product passport? So compliance, sustainability, IT, that's the core team. And then you can move on to brand marketing. Would you say the same, Neil?
Yeah, I would say the same. And you know, the critical factor is that yeah, and the message we consistently get from EU Commission is that ESPR and DPP is, while supported by data, it is not a compliance and data initiative. It's an initiative to make a better world and create a better societal environment within the EU. Of course, data, compliance, certification, and the transparency and verification of that is a supporting framework. But really, you know, we've got to consider that our whole marketplace is moving to a greener environment. That data is supporting it, and all stakeholders in the business will have to take part in this and understand what's going on. You know, ultimately, it boils down to a very simple fact. All stakeholders must be involved and understand, because come mid-2027, if you don't have a DPP and you are not compliant, you won't be able to sell your goods. We don't like to use the fear factor, but ultimately, that is a fact.
It's the reality. It's the reality. We got to change.
Yeah.
I think another question from
Yeah,
Sven.
we got another question. We got another question. Yeah.
So, go on.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah. So this is actually quite a good question from a data structure and presentation perspective. So Mubashir has a product with web pages with all the needed data designed to look like a DPP. Can I use those URLs to integrate with the GS1 link to make DPP?
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, if you have your own online product web pages and you've got all the needed data there, including, you know, what's required by the regulation, whether it's the AJAC or the ESPR, you can build a GS1 digital link from that. Usually, we do not recommend it, first and foremost, because we're not necessary then, but that's not really the thing. It's more like an e-commerce store is intended to convert. You want to convert your customer into buying the product, right? That's the goal of the e-commerce team. And if you're gonna have a digital product passport there, it will either be hidden, which is definitely not allowed by the regulation, right? There's requirements on the accessibility. Let's look at the AJAC right now. And then secondly, if you make it too apparent, if you make it too visible, then you're probably going to hurt your e-commerce performance, which your e-commerce manager doesn't like. But technically speaking, yes, you can use GS1 digital link, and if the information is there, it's a good start. Now, looking at the future, we're going to see a lot of other things like central registries, and you gotta, and probably it's going to be very difficult to keep up with the regulation. What do you think, Neil?
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I mean, we constantly have these discussions in respect of the fact that we're dealing with data here and we're dealing with key identifiers, and as such, anything is almost possible. However, you've got to look at the most efficient route of least resistance to get that information and that passport resolved. One of the key issues I see with this workflow here is creating the link between the trim product and the web page itself. So how do you associate the web page that you've already established with a GS1 data link using the GTIN and the PO at batch level or even sequential level, associate that with the trims and get that to resolve? Again, something not impossible, but technically difficult to achieve in bulk, I would say.
I didn't even think of that one, Neil. You're right. How are you going to get like the coupling?
That's why I'm here.
Yeah, to be right. Nice. Any more questions you selected, Neil?
Yeah, we have one more question for you, I believe. Additional question about repairs. The brand that Victoria works for doesn't have a repair or recycling service. Will DPP mean that this will become mandatory to establish in order to offer a service on the DPP?
I don't think so, but well, maybe in the future. But what I think is most important is that you should enable the data flow to at least facilitate this repair service, right? So that
Yeah.
you know, the most simple one to make sure we have mutual understanding is like you should communicate what material and all the components that are being used so you can actually get the product back on the same level and extend its product lifetime. I think that is one of the things how the ESPR will definitely require you to facilitate this repair, but it will not be mandatory, I believe, to have a repair service.
Yeah, there's a simple, actually, if you don't mind me interjecting, Bas, there's a simple statement that I remember from one of the Surpass meetings. It's all to do with the transparency and provenance data being mandatory, and the requirement to encourage circular activity downstream. So certainly by 2027, the operating word will be to encourage, not necessarily fully facilitate in-house. And obviously we do need to wait and understand exactly what those requirements will be. But I think, you know, if we assume encourage is the word, then that's what probably the right direction to go in right now.
All right, Neil, I think we're over time right now. A last question, which I want to select, but we'll keep it very short. How can multi-brand retailers who do not produce their own products prepare for DPPs? Who is responsible for adding to DPPs? Well, that one, if I can just answer the first part, because it's 3 questions and we don't have time, unfortunately. So the ones that's going to be responsible is those who put it on the market. So if a brand sells to a retailer, then the brand is responsible for adding the DPP, although it could be possible that retailers also have some role to check whether all their products are legal, right? Like and to stay legal after 1st of July 2027, you need the DPP. But it will be the brand, the one that puts the products on the EU market, that's the one that's responsible for the DPP. And thank you so much for all your question, guys. We see there's a bunch more, and we will definitely get back to you through email. I think it's time to do our final words. Neil, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. We have 3 tips from professionals that we're currently engaged with and have successfully launched DPP solutions. So, Bas, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, for sure. So Laura Kudijk, the sustainability manager of Studio Annaluz, says, think carefully about which colleagues you want to involve and for what purpose, so that everyone can be included in the start in aspects like design, data collection, and integration. So I think the summarized version is establish the right project team. Neil, take the next one.
And we have another one along similar lines from Pierre at Contour Brands, which is start now understanding where your data sits and align the internal stakeholders for what's coming. And I think that also answers some of the questions that we've not formally answered here. You know, really get ready, start to get ready now. And the final one, Bas?
Right. And then the last one is from North Action Sports Group, from North and Mystic Boarding. Before anything else, focus on the consumer. Think about what you want to communicate to them, and most importantly, how you can make it engaging and relevant to their needs. North has been a customer for a while now, and they are very successful also with connecting with their customers because likely their products will not be in scope for the first regulation. So I can see how that is their tip. Final goodbyes. Moving to the last part, which is our contact details. They should be up here shortly. I want to say again, all the answers in the questions, all the questions in the chat or in the Q&A section, we will get back to you by email over the next couple of days. If you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to us. Our contact details should be here shortly. There they are. Add us on LinkedIn, follow Charming on LinkedIn, follow Tappr on LinkedIn. And thank you so much for joining today. Neil, did I forget anything?
No, I think you covered it all, Bas. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Thank you so much.
Bye.